Hello again, everyone. I'm Lorianne from Stonehaven Shorts. If you've just found us on YouTube, I am very new to acreage living. I have lived in the city for 20 years. I grew up on a farm, so I'm not a total stranger, but hey, I feel like I've lost a lot of skills. So I'm learning along, and hopefully you can learn along with me and you can see all the failures that I've had. So today, kale was grown early in the season, and I had a wonderful crop of kale. To be honest, I have to say that I'm a new fan of kale for a couple of reasons. It came up fast. It came up super green. I did use some organic seeds from West Coast Seeds. I can see if I can get the actual name I had. And it keeps clean because when it grows up, and it's not, that close to the dirt where lettuce is when it rains and it really gets that backsplash of the dirt. Kale does not. So it keeps quite clean. It maintains its crispness. I don't find it bitter at all in the recipes that I use. So, play around with it, I guess. I find that I really enjoy it in a Caesar salad because it maintains that crispness. So this episode is dedicated to kale, sort of our ode to kale. And I have a few recipes that I do. Maybe you've got some that you would like to share with me. I would love to hear about them in the comments. The first thing that I'm going to tell you about is that I have freeze-dried some kale. I used to have a vacuum sealer that I kind of stole from my son, and then he stole it back. So then I didn't have a vacuum sealer. So I recently did a whole bunch of research, actually almost for 9 months. During the winter, I did research on the best type of food saver. Yes, I did use that brand. What I came to the realization is that I do a lot of pickling and freezing. So really what I'm using it for is not as intense. I didn't need a commercial one. I didn't need anything with all the bells and whistles. I just needed something that was going to vacuum seal some items. So I did use a Food Saver brand, and so far I'm just kind of getting used to it, but I do like it. And it really suctioned this kale quite nicely. I just washed it. I did take the stems off. Now, for those of you who followed along, you know that I make my own broth, and my own vegetable broth is one of my favorites. So I have saved the stems in a little bag. It's going to head itself into the freezer, and then when I'm ready to make my broth, it'll come out and make that nice tasty broth. So that's one thing that I've done. The second thing is that I've made a lot of salads, and I put it in a lot of stir fries. You can just saute it on its own as well. There's lots of recipes online, so I don't want to get into that. Take a look for sure. But these will be frozen, and when in the wintertime, when I need to beef up my soup a little bit, I will throw a little bit of that in. The second thing that I have just come on to, because a friend of mine has said, hey, you can make pesto out of basically anything that's green. And I was like, what the heck? I thought pesto was just some shishi lala stuff that you get at an Italian shop. Boy, was I wrong. You can make pesto out of carrot tops, out of beet tops, and today I'm going to make it out of kale. So this recipe is super simple, and the other thing that's good about pestos is that you can just kind of substitute with whatever you have on hand. So yeah, I could do it with beet greens. I do have some beet greens on hand, but I'm choosing it to do with kale. So I need about 2 cups of kale, and you don't need the stems. So there's many ways that you can de-stem it. I actually just pull it on it. This is stem. This has already been washed, and of course I'm saving my stems because I am using it for my broth. And honestly, some of my kale, I probably have to harvest the rest of it because it is just about turning yellow and hasn't gone to seed yet, but it's not as green as it once was. So we're looking for about 2 cups. And I'm just about at 2 cups. And again, you know what? Beef it up, tame it down, do whatever you want. The other thing that we're gonna need is Parmesan cheese. I'm cheating. I'm totally cheating, by the way. I am using garlic out of a jar. I'm using lemon out of a jar. I am using Parmesan out of a shaker. Very humid today. And if you have pine nuts, if you can afford and find pine nuts, that's what this recipe calls for. I have a tough time paying the price for pine nuts in my area. So I'm going to substitute with cashews because I got a good deal on some cashews. You could use almonds, basically any nut. So let me get this on, plugged in here. I'm just gonna pulse this for a bit, and then we're gonna put the other ingredients in. Now pesto I prefer actually pesto on my pasta with just a little bit of butter and salt. I don't need a nice big sauce. Lately, I'm finding that as I age, I can't handle the tomato sauces or anything really hot anymore because it gives me such heartburn. So there we go. So we've got it down to something that looks like that. And now I'm going to add in, now again, for those of you who know me, I'm not a huge measurer. So about 1/4 cup of olive oil, something like that. We are going to use 1/2 cup of Parmesan. Well, let's see what I got here for Parmesan. Oh yeah, I got a fair amount. This looks good. And we need 2 garlic cloves. I like a lot of garlic. So because I'm cheating, it's coming from a jar. Let's say that's a clove. Let's say that's a clove and a little bit to keep me honest. Some lemon. Now that's about 1/2 lemon or 1.5 tablespoons of lemon juice. 1, 2, and a little bit of love. And some salt, about 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Again, I'm not upset if you put too much salt in. And 1/4 cup of pine nuts. So again, I have cashews. I mean, how can it go wrong if you add a few more nuts? Is that the end of the world? I don't think so. That looks like about 1/4 cup. That's just enough to make us more honest. And some basil, if you have fresh basil, which I do, but I am choosing to just use the spiced or the dried version for this recipe, because I want to save my basil for something else. I actually should be harvesting a wee bit of it and dehydrating it or freeze drying it. I don't have a freeze dryer, but I find that if you just freeze it in a vacuum bag, it's just as good. So basil, we are looking for just enough to make it feel Italian. Okay, and then we're going to chop that up a little bit. Looking for a nice fine texture here. So we're gonna let that go for a wee bit longer. There we go. Let's just take a look and see. Oh, it's looking pretty good. Looking pretty, oh, it smells divine. Holy smokes. You know what? I think I'm gonna have pasta tonight just so I can have the pesto. And I put this like in tuna salad. I put it just on normal salad. Let me just show you what it looks like here. So that is kind of the texture. Oh, that's how simple that is. Now, that'll keep in a nice jar in the fridge for about a week. I have frozen pesto before. Delightful, not a problem whatsoever. Because honestly, you're putting it within a pasta, usually within a pasta. It holds its flavor. It's really good. So there you have it. There is my ode to kale. Looks like I got a little bit more pasta or pesto to make, possibly a little bit more freeze drying. And again, all my stems I'm saving to be put into my broth. Ode to kale, kind of avoiding the ordinary here. Hope you do the same. See you again. I'm Lorianne. This is Stonehaven Shorts.